Increasing sales this year is more important than ever before. Why? Well, I don't have to tell anyone that we've just emerged from the longest and deepest recession in over 7 decades. Now, the good news is that this year, we finally have the opportunity to generate a substantial amount of new first-time revenue, and we can close these deals at a higher net profit than during the last 5 years. One market segment that's roaring back to life is meetings and conventions. During the last few years, too many meetings, conferences, and conventions were cut back, and in too many cases, they were eliminated altogether. In fact, between 2009 and 2011, a lot of meeting planners were laid off. Now, that's not necessarily bad news because that means that corporations and nonprofits and associations that had worked exclusively with one of your competitors, well, the new buyer doesn't have any loyalty to your direct competitors this year. This year, meeting planners nationwide are reporting that they've been assigned higher budgets, enabling their employers to get out and get back in touch with customers, employees, and members for the first time since the recession. Budgets are up because corporations and national associations are starving for that face-to-face time they enjoyed before the recession began. And that means now is the time for you to aggressively reach out and target meeting planners who are finally under marching orders to book more, spend more, and have longer meetings than before the recession. What if I was to tell you about a new service? One that you could log on to at any time, and it would provide you with advanced information about upcoming conventions and large meetings. In fact, you would have access to this information as soon as the meeting planner finalized the conference's location. This service would also provide you with the organization's name, the meeting dates, the anticipated attendance. It would give you the company or the association's website, and if they'd set up a special landing page for the conference, it would provide you with that information as well. You would be provided with the name of the convention center or the hotel where the meeting was taking place. You'd have advance notice from as little as 6 months to 4 years out. You would no longer have to cold call meeting prospects and barrage them with opening questions to determine if they are holding meetings, when, for how long, and where. Why? Because you would know this information in advance. You would know it before you picked up the phone. Once you subscribe to this service, you'd only be calling people who had a definite need for Summit's products and services. This service provides you with valuable marketing intelligence that would allow you to stand head and shoulders above all of your competitors who are calling these same prospects. For example, if their conference was on or near a beach, you could have beach towels, flip-flops, and sunscreen on their desk before you even place that call. If the prospect is meeting in Vegas, you could send an oversized set of dice with the message imprinted, "Don't gamble with a supplier who does not know your company as well as I do." Let's say one of these conferences is in Washington, Chicago, or Atlanta. You could position Summit as the best-in-class local supplier that was only a short car ride away if the planner ever needed any help or there was ever a problem. So how much would you pay for this service? Well, it's absolutely free. Very few of your competitors are aware of it. All you have to invest is time. Speaking of time, when we interviewed last year's top sales producers, the majority told us they actually did not spend more time prospecting than their competitors did. But what they did tell us is they spent their time targeting better prospects. Now, this strategy that I'm about to share with you allows you to directly target meeting planners with a definite, contracted future meeting or conference. All you need to get a steady stream of leads is a little knowledge, a little time, and some help from Google or Bing. Let's start with a little background information. The first decision a meeting planner makes in planning a convention or conference is what city to meet in. In fact, one of the very first groups of salespeople that will actually contact the meeting planner is employed by the various cities that want to host that meeting. Today, most big cities have what's called a Convention and Visitors Bureau. Meeting planners refer to these as CVBs. CVBs are one of their most valuable initial suppliers. CVBs are also very competitive, and they will furnish the planner with an array of services to help them land that conference. Cities are very competitive, and that fact alone is what's going to make your job a lot more focused and easier. That's because the moment the meeting planner decides what city to hold the conference in, the Convention and Visitors Bureau is going to post that information to their convention calendar. It's kind of like a bartender ringing the bell when they get a big tip. And it's on those convention calendars that you will be able to drill for highly qualified leads. So our first step is to go to Google, the first place we go on most sales prospecting these days. In this particular case, I want you to pick any city you want. We're going to use San Francisco. Type the name of your city and then type Convention and Visitors Bureau, not CVB. CVB will not pull in as many as Convention and Visitors Bureau. So city plus phrase and click search. In this particular case, we've got quite a few returns, and I just want to show you the top 3 here. You see, they all have the same web address, the same URL. That's the URL that's owned and operated by the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Now, don't worry, you don't see anything here that says anything about Convention, Visitors Bureau, meetings. That's because the CVB's biggest responsibility is to draw tourists in. Meetings is a close second, but it's really not the #1 priority of the CVB. So everything you will see in the beginning is focused on tourists. Click on any one of these 3 results and you'll end up on this page. This is the page. It's owned and operated and managed by the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and yes, it's almost entirely directed towards consumers. This is where the specialized knowledge comes in. If you look up at the top of the page, you'll see those tiny little words where the tabs are. You want to click on the one called Meeting Planners. Almost every CVB has a tab just for meeting planners. Click on that. Here we are now in the section of their website that's reserved exclusively for meeting planners. One of the most important things you're going to see right below meeting planners, the very first tab in orange, is called Convention Calendar. 4 out of every 10 CVBs in the United States will publish to the general public their Convention and Visitors Bureau calendar. For the offices in Atlanta and Washington and Chicago, if you are already members of the CVB, you will have special access granted by your paid membership. You'll be able to see a little bit more than the general public. But for most of us, we can see 4 out of every 10 CVB's convention calendar. This is where the magic information we need is contained. So let's click on this in San Francisco. San Francisco has a really good, robust site. Most of your cities won't be this sophisticated. San Francisco is allowing us to search by date, by attendance, and by peak rooms. So for the purpose of date, I'm going to put in May of 2014 to May of 2015. We'll search for only those meetings that are 1 to 2 years out. Attendance, just drop in a low number and a high number. It really doesn't matter because frankly a board meeting is just as lucrative to some of us as a convention. Room pickup or peak rooms, don't worry about that. Just put in any numbers you want or leave it blank. That really is a piece of information that the meeting planner is looking for. It's how they determine whether there's enough empty rooms during that time period for them to even consider San Francisco. And below this, San Francisco does what about half the CVBs that have public sites do. It gives you a list of their venues, the places you can have a meeting, so that you can search specific venues. For our case, we want to search them all. I want to draw your attention to one. This one's on almost all of the CVBs that have a public site, and it's called Hotel. That's where they lump all the meetings that are being held at Westins, Hiltons, Hyatts, Marriotts, and Comfort Inns. As you can see, once we click search, we have 206 meetings that are already contracted and will take place 1 to 2 years from now. And this is where we get the magic intelligence that enables us to prospect on steroids. So let's scroll down this list. I'm looking at late 2014, early 2015. You've got a variety of meetings here from 700 attendees to 20,000 to 19,000 to 22,000. This list is jam-packed with qualified leads that'll help you reach meeting planners before any of your competition is even aware that these meetings are taking place. But I want to show you one more way to dig a little deeper. Let me share with you a little bit more of that specialized knowledge. Now, in most cities, the Convention and Visitors Bureau site will contain all the information you need. But in the big meeting cities like Orlando, Las Vegas, San Francisco, Chicago, Washington, the convention center itself may have its own calendar. So a Google search to the convention center, meeting planners tab, and let's look for their convention calendar as we've done here, and San Francisco's convention center. And as you can see, I've scrolled down to those meetings taking place 1 year from now, April 2014. And I've just randomly selected the American Association of Neurological Surgeons. Let's click on that site. It will take us to a slightly bigger site within the convention center's database. And there's a lot of information here, but we already know most of this. But what it has is right here, the website that the association has set up itself on its own platform to promote this meeting. And that's where we want to go. When we click on there, you will see that the very first thing that this particular association is doing is promoting this meeting. But now I need information. I know where the meeting's taking place. I know when it's taking place. I've got to find out who to call. So most sites will have an About Us tab. In this particular site, it says About AANS. Go there and go down to Executive Office. Sometimes it says Our Staff. Anything that refers to finding out more about the people who work at this corporation, association, or nonprofit. When we click on Executive Office, we get two great pieces of information. First, I now have the full contact information: name, mailing address, phone, fax, toll-free number, email, and website. I even have a picture of the building. Looks just like the Summit office in Chicago. But now when I scroll down here, I get a list of not only the key decision makers. I can send them direct email just by clicking on their name, or I can pick up the phone and call them. And in particular, we now have Patricia Anderson, who is the meeting planner in charge of this conference. This search, once you get used to doing it, won't take you more than 30 to 35 seconds. It's just click, 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 and you have an extremely well-qualified lead. And you can pick up the phone and say, I know when you're meeting, where you're meeting, what your issues are, and I'm calling you direct. And suddenly, you become head and shoulders a much better salesperson than all the other people that are calling that meeting planner that month. So let's review. In a 3-minute search, we found out when this association is coming to San Francisco, where they're holding their trade show and meeting, how many people are coming. We then went to their website. We found out where they are. We've got their web address, email address. We have the phone numbers of all the decision makers. But we're not finished with this website yet, because even though our initial call was to talk about the annual meeting, this is an association. They're going to have multiple meetings. So before we make that very first contact, we want to go back to the home site, and we want to click on a tab right down here called Education and Meetings. When you click on that tab, you're going to see that this particular association, like the Moscone Center and the CVB, publishes their own meeting calendar. Let's click on that calendar, and we're now going to have a complete listing of all the meetings, conferences, and conventions that they have between now and the initial reason we picked up the phone to call them. This is why searching with a little specialized knowledge will turn an average prospect into a deep, rich prospect, and will take the time that you spend prospecting from a series of cold calls to red, hot marketing calls that will have a much higher success rate and ROI for the time you invest. Let's apply this same formula to Atlanta. We go to Google, we type in Atlanta, Convention and Visitors Bureau. It takes us to the CVB site. We drill into it until we find the tab for meeting planners. We go there. Then we look for the convention calendar. Just like San Francisco, Atlanta is allowing me to search by a date range. In this particular case, I've put in May of 2014 through June of 2015. I click on here and boom, it shows me a complete list of every meeting that's taking place in Atlanta during that time period. As you can see, Atlanta is one of those CVBs that gives you that long laundry list of conventions. But I had an opportunity to look at this list before we made this video, and I went down here and I did find a client that I really liked, a client that I may have worked with a year or two before and was not able to close the deal. In this particular case, let's say we're looking at the Christian Booksellers Association. Now that's a large group. That's 8,000 people. They're coming to Atlanta in 2015 or 14, excuse me. So I've got some time. They're going to be staying mostly at the Omni Hotel, but the event will take place at the convention center. Huge trade show opportunity. I can sell to them. I can sell to everybody at the trade show. But just like San Francisco, Atlanta gives me the opportunity to click on this button right here and go view the website that the association has set up itself on its own platform to talk about this meeting. Let's have a look. As you can see, we're doing some prospecting over a year out. So they're still promoting and talking about this year's conference, which is going to take place in June this summer in St. Louis. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to look around and see what other meetings they're having between now and the end of the year. So my next step is to look at all the meetings and conferences that I could possibly have an opportunity to review with the meeting planner. But that's my next step. Let's go find out who's in charge of meetings at this association. Now, I'm glad we picked this particular association because they do something that a lot of associations do, and that is they hide the name of the meeting planner. The meeting planner knows if their name is out there, they're going to get hit by a variety of salespeople. So in this particular case, you will see that almost all of the email addresses on this particular list, as far as conventions, have a generic name in the front, like conventions or exhibits or information. But let's drill just a little bit deeper because there's two emails here I really like. The first is for an individual on the convention staff, and her name is Stephanie. And Stephanie is there if you want to stage some kind of an event for your customers while the conference is going. She is definitely on the meetings and convention staff, and she's a really good person to start with. The next person I spied on the way down was this gentleman right here. His name is Ed Grimm. Ed Grimm's in charge of strategic partnerships. So in essence, Ed's job is to work very closely with outside companies that can generate a revenue stream back to this association. If this association doesn't have a company store or has a poorly run company store, Ed's somebody I want to talk to because Summit can certainly operate a far better store as far as wearable materials and promotional giveaways than their current supplier. Let's take a quick look at Chicago. This is a great market for Summit. Chicago is like all the other big meeting sites. They do provide us with a robust search engine that allows us to search by date, industry, location, venue, etc. Let's say that a supplier has come in and given us a great idea for a product that both the meeting planner and the people in the trade shows at a medical conference would just love. I go to the Chicago site, and the very first medical conference I come across is the American Society of Hand Therapists. I've got enough lead time probably for the trade show vendors and maybe for the meeting planner. Like the other conference sites, it gives me access to the private web page set up by the meeting planner within their web environment. I go there, I now know the dates, I know the theme, I know the speakers, and I do a little detective work and I can quickly find the staff listing or the tab. Sometimes it's called About Us, sometimes it's called Executive Team, but it's always there. Click on that, and within just a matter of minutes, I have the 3 individuals that are in charge of this conference. I've got their direct telephone number and their private emails. And this took me just a matter of minutes to complete. Now, the mother of all trade show sites is Vegas. Vegas gets more meetings in a week than some cities get in a year. Their site is a really impressive engine. I can go in and look at all the traditional criteria, but I can put in just an industry. Let's say automotive. It will then only report back to me those automotive conventions and meetings taking place in Vegas in the next 5, 10 years, whatever my parameters are. Let's say, for example, I've had a lot of success at Summit with the food industry, people who manufacture food or beverage products. Well, one of the first conventions I see in Vegas is the World Tea Expo, 7,500 individuals. Now, Vegas does something a little different than everybody else. Before you pop over to the conference's private website, They've actually built a really nice little page for each meeting. Gives you a lot more detail. Tells you about the convention center or the venue, but it also tells you what hotel they're staying at. Now, I like this for Summit because you can then offer to ship to the hotel versus the convention center. If you've ever signed for a shipment that's delivered to your booth at a convention center, it's enormous. But by shipping to the hotel, you can save the meeting planner a lot of money and, once again, a slight competitive advantage. But like the other sites, it also gives me that private access to the meeting planner's website that gives me all the information I need to begin to prospect for this call. And like we've done in the past, it only takes me a matter of moments to identify who's in charge of this meeting and to get all the key contact information I need to make a nice warm call to this association, corporation, or nonprofit. Now, earlier I told you that just about 40% of the convention and visitors bureaus hang out their convention calendar for the general public. 60% don't. Those 60% tend to be mid and small cities like Savannah, Milwaukee, or Baltimore. They do this because they actually get the majority of their income from membership dues, local businesses. So they like to hide that convention calendar so only their dues-paying members can have access to it. That is, of course, unless you know how to look for it, and then you can get it too. Look at the brown strip on the bottom of the Portland, Oregon CVB site. We're going to jump right down there. There's two words here, site map. You'll see these on 90% of all websites you go to. And all this opens up is the table of contents for this website. This website may have 100 pages. 60 are available to the public, 40 are internal or private. But the site map is the table of contents. It lists all the pages. We click on that, and look, the number 2 page on sitemap is the events calendar. It's not available to the public, but we knew where to look. We click on it, and now we have a list of all the conventions, conferences, and meetings coming to Portland, Oregon in the next 5 to 10 years. So there you have it. You now have an arsenal of ideas and strategies and tactics. You've got specialized knowledge. You know how to look and search better than your competition does. For the next 4 years, meetings, conventions, and conferences are exploding. Nonprofits, corporations, and associations are all forecasting more meetings in the coming years than they did since pre-recession. So what are you waiting for? Let's get out there and tap into this call. We don't have to make cold calls anymore. From here on in, it's warm calls. And I promise you, if you pursue this market and use these tactics, you can generate a minimum of $100,000 between now and the end of the year that will go into your column that will help you hit your 2013 sales goal and help you jump into bonus territory.